At 48 years old, at 300 pounds, I collapsed in a customer's backyard, congestive heart failure. I enjoyed eating meat, and every doctor and every health person I talked to said, you can't eat meat. I mean, I had horrible gout. And the more I ate the way they told me to eat, the worse it got. The heavier I got, the sicker I got. And I had 6 major cardiac events. Within a year and a half, I lost my family, my business, my ministry, my freedom, my sanity, ended up in jail. So I went from being about 245 pounds back up to 300 plus. I found your video, actually. And I'm like, wait a minute, I love steak. I love hamburger. I love beef. And if I can actually do this and get healthy. So I started eating the beef and the water and the salt. At the time, my heart was functioning between 10 and 15%. And then I went to a church, and the pastor prophesied over me that God is going to heal your heart. And of course, God, sometimes he does miraculous things. Sometimes he does medical things. Sometimes he just changes your diet.
For those of you who are joining us for this video today, Stephen reached out to me through the Ferrigno Freedom website to request information about a carnivore conversation. And this is something that I encourage any of you to do who have had an experience on a carnivore diet that you'd like to share with the world. And maybe you're just not ready to jump into doing your own YouTube channel, but you'd still like to be able to encourage others down the path that has changed things for you. That's a great way to start, is at ferrignofreedom.com. But we're going to talk today about Stephen's journey. Stephen's journey has been kind of amazing. From the pictures that I've seen alone, it's been one heck of a journey for you. And from the things you've mentioned about kicking certain medicines and stuff like that, it sounds like it's been a wonderful benefit for you. So Let's get started by just maybe introducing yourself, and you can tell everyone a little bit about your past and how most people are all going down the same path on this lifestyle of eating the same junk foods and then realizing something needed to change. But I would still like to hear your individual story, if you don't mind sharing it with us. Maybe go into a little background too on if this has been a lifelong struggle, if you've had a lot of health issues or those kind of things. That way you can kind of really paint the picture for our audience, because I guarantee you there's somebody out there right now who's where you were when you started that needs to hear your story.
I'm sure. I wish I had known this about 5-6 years ago. I wouldn't have had to go through as much crisis as I went through, I believe. But God is good, and he doesn't waste anything. But my name's Stephen. I used to be a business owner. I had a construction company that I inherited from my father, and my sister and brother-in-law were my partners. I also pastored the church senior pastor for 9 years, associate pastor for 8 years. I tried to be a good husband and father, but like most people chasing the American dream, I worked 18-hour days, and even when I wasn't at work, I was at work. I had 3 phones. They never stopped ringing. I can remember, trying to go to every performance my kids had, trying to be at every softball game, every gymnastics, every, church event, everything. And I used to, laugh and say I would rest when I was dead. I didn't burn the candle at both ends. I cut it in the middle and lit it there too. But at 48 years old, at 300 pounds, I collapsed in a customer's backyard, congestive heart failure. And of course, being a very proud man and a very determined man, very driven man, I stood up in front of my congregation and said, I will not lay in a hospital bed waiting to die. I'm going to fight this, even though everybody around me was telling me to rest. And so I jumped onto whatever diet I could find. The more
Something
diets
had you lead you to carnivore, though. So how did that path go?
That was actually by accident. I enjoyed eating meat, and every doctor and every health person I talked to said, you can't eat meat. I mean, I had horrible gout. I mean, I don't know if you can see my wrist, but I mean, these are just big old gout bumps on both wrists.
Yeah.
I got them on my feet, my ankles, my knees, just everywhere. And the more I ate the way they told me to eat, the worse it got. The heavier I got, the sicker I got. Between June 6th of 2018 and July 2nd of 2019, I had 6 major cardiac events, hospitalized for 8 to 10 days, saving my life. Just
But
got
what years
sick,
were
sick.
those?
2018 to 2019.
So within a year. Wow.
Yeah, within a year. And in the course of all of that, I got addicted to the morphine. And of course, when I got out of the hospital, instead of going back and telling the doctors, hey, I'm really struggling with this, I found pills on the street. At that time, prescription pills were easy to get, opiates. But then they got harder and harder to find. And then you turn to, the street drugs, the fentanyl, the heroin.
Yeah.
And then I went into Scottsdale Banner Behavioral Health to try to get off of the drugs. And they put me on psych meds. And that's when everything just crashed. Within a year and a half, I lost my family, my business, my ministry, my freedom, my sanity. Ended up in jail. I'd never been arrested my entire life. But at 50 years old, I was arrested. And I ended up with 3 DUIs. And I mean, it just was just this crazy, crazy loop. And the more I cried out for help, the more people like disappeared. The ones that I thought would be there to help me didn't know how, and I ended up in Teen Challenge. And there you can't choose your diet. So I went from being, about 245 pounds back up to 300 plus. And then when I got out of Teen Challenge, I found your video actually. And I'm like, wait a minute. I love steak. I love hamburger. I love beef. And if I can actually do this and get healthy, everybody was telling me, you can't do that. You have gout. You have this. You're going to kill yourself. There's no way you can just eat beef, water, and salt. You're going to die doing that. But I was like, you know what? I've tried the vegetables. I've tried the fruits, and it just gets sicker and worse and fatter and more miserable. And I don't like it, And so I started eating the beef and the water and the salt, and the weight started coming off. And of course, having gone through recovery and with drug addiction and whatnot, everybody in my life is like, oh God, he's back on drugs. Oh my God, he's losing all this weight. He's getting
Yeah.
skinny again. He
Yeah.
must
I got
be,
accused of
he must
cancer
have
and other
relapsed.
things.
Yeah. He must have relapsed. He must have went back to what he was doing, because there's no way you can lose this kind of weight this fast. And I would go into my doctors. At the time, my heart was functioning between 10 and 15%. And then I went to a church, and the pastor prophesied over me that God is going to heal your heart. And of course, God, sometimes he does miraculous things. Sometimes he does medical things. Sometimes he just changes your diet. And so I went back 6 months later, and my heart was at 22%. I went back a year later, and my heart was at 35%. I just got my latest echocardiogram done like a month ago, and my heart's at 55%.
Wow. From 10?
From 10, yeah. I was on 17 different medications. I'm now on no medications. I still have colchicine for gout on occasion, like if I take my wife out to eat and I decide to eat what's at the restaurant and I have a gout flare up, then, I'll take a colchicine or whatever to knock that back down. But I don't take any prescription meds. I used to take Tylenol every day for headaches and sinus headaches, and I don't take that anymore. I mean, it's amazing to wake up every day and just feel good, feel
Yeah.
like there's life again, feel like there's something to look forward to. And in the process of all that self-destruction, my wife had separated from me. We were separated for 5 years. We're now living in the same house again. We're not in the same bed yet, but we're in the same house.
Building.
Right. I have 4 daughters. 3 of them are back in a relationship with me. The youngest is still kind of hurt. It's going to take her a little bit longer, but that's okay. God is good, and things are turning around. And so it's nice to have hope. It's nice to want to get up. It's nice to want to embrace the day. It's nice to be happy to have challenges in your life again, to grow. And
Man, such a turnaround. That is
right.
that is truly remarkable, Stephen. And you went through it so quickly. It's like, man, so much could happen to a person in such a short period of time. It's kind of amazing. But I'm glad that it took even though it went down, it came back up. So that's the beautiful part, because that sounded like that could have been a free fall into destruction.
Well, it was. It definitely was. I still don't drive a car. I take the bus. I ride a bike, which is one of the best things that ever happened to me. I ride a bike every day, and I'm not supposed to. There was a point in my life I couldn't walk 100 feet without being out of breath. Now I can ride 10 miles and be just fine. I mean, I'm not, racing, but slow and steady. I'm not rucking with 40 pounds on my back, but I can get on a bicycle and I can ride and ride and ride and just enjoy it, And my wife is now starting to ride with me. We bought her a bike, and so she tried doing the carnivore diet with me. She doesn't like meat that much. She likes to eat chicken. I keep telling her there's a reason Adam named that stuff fowl. I'm not a big chicken eater. So I started cooking for her, because I do most of the cooking, because I'm on disability. I don't work, other than just whatever God puts in front of me. I go out with a church group multiple times a week and help feed the homeless, which I call it my fishing expeditions. We take food out, but Jesus called us to be fishers of men, and the food is just a reason to have a conversation. It's just a reason to say, hey, man, we see you. God loves you. Here's something to sustain you. Can we pray for you? Can we help you get off the street? And man, I get to do that. The
That
kind of
is
stuff that I
that is
used to.
amazing.
Right. I mean, I used to wish I could do that stuff, but I worked so hard, and I tried to gather so many things and be a good provider and a good this and a good that. I live on less money than I used to pay in taxes, but all my children are provided for. Um, my wife doesn't go without. I don't go without. I don't have the income level I used to have, but I have time to get up every day and read my Bible. I have time to just encounter people on the street and not be in a hurry, and just talk to them where they're at, and try to be that person that encourages them today. I get to be present today. It's not all about the schedules, the deadlines, the customers, the employees, the crush of normal American life. There's a verse in Ephesians where it says that God has allotted the wicked to gather provisions for the righteous, and for those that please God, He causes them to give into their account. So every day I just try to please God, and I let Him worry about the provision.
That's
It's amazing.
Gosh, that's encouraging to me, Stephen. I mean, I'm going through the difficulty of all the maintaining life and all of that right now too. So I can definitely relate to what you're talking about there, including all the crash situation that you went through. I didn't quite have it go as rough as your situation did, but as rough as mine was, I know that's a lot to go through with the DUIs and then time in jail and oh my goodness, it's enough to get somebody to quit. But I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah, me too.
So you
You
found
know,
out about eating this way, or you didn't really find out about eating this way. You just decided you were gonna eat more
well, I,
meat
I, I found
early
your
on.
video. I found your first video. Your
Before
100.
that, though, before you went to rehab and all of that, because I think you found that after rehab, right?
Yes.
Had you changed anything beforehand? I was under the impression that you were just eating more meat.
Well, actually, I was eating less meat. I
Okay, so you
love
were
meat.
eating less meat initially.
Yeah, I love steak. I love burgers. I love, beef. I really do. I'm Irish. Beef and potatoes. I'm happy. And but the more I ate what I liked, the more the doctors would yell at me. Like, you can't eat that way. You're going to die. You're going to blow up your heart. You have to. They basically wanted me to be a vegan. I hated eating.
So you
I
were
mean,
following all that advice up until this, and you
right,
were trying
but
to cut out
because
processed foods and things because it sounded like you were losing weight. You said you were up to 300 and you were down to two something when you had your.
that was from the drugs.
Oh, it was from the drugs. Okay.
Yeah, that was from, the only time I was ever thin in my whole life was when I was in my early 20s when I was on drugs. And then after that, once I got sober, I got married. The first time I got sober is when my first daughter was born. And that doctor put that little girl in my hands. And I looked at her, and she had never done anything for me or against me. But I knew at that moment I would give my life for that little girl. And I thought, if my little girl needs me and I'm so out of it, I can't lift my head off the couch. How can I live with that? And so I quit. It was miraculous. It was at a church service. People prayed for me, and instantaneously it was just gone.
Wow.
And for 27 years, I was sober. It wasn't until I got sick um, that I thought, well, I'm doing everything they're telling me to do. I'm eating the 6 portions of grains. I'm eating the rice. I'm eating the pastas. I'm eating the breads. I'm trying to choke down the vegetables, which I don't really like. And I ate the fruit, and the more fruit I got, the worse my gout got. I mean, I was on crutches. My feet would be so bad. I was trying to run a business from crutches. It wasn't good. I can remember at one time I had surgical boots on both feet. And it's hard to run a construction company that way,
Yeah.
let alone pastor a church and be a good husband and father when you're in pain all the time.
Yeah.
And
I've known people with gout. I haven't had it, but I've known them with gout, and the slightest touch, like a feather landed on his toe
yeah,
or something. And it was just like you shot him. So,
right.
it,
Well, not just my toe. I mean, my knees, my
right.
ankles, my feet, my just
Yeah,
everywhere.
I understand it goes a lot further than that. That's just where it usually
Yeah,
presents, and that's where it presented with this guy. And that was my first experience seeing somebody dealing with gout, and I thought, my goodness, that is how can it be
yeah.
that painful? So
Oh,
you were dealing with gout, and then now you had been dealing with gout before you had your first heart problem where you collapsed in a person's yard.
right.
Okay, and meanwhile, while this happened, you were on the diet that the doctors are recommending for you.
Correct. And then every time I complained about anything, they would just add another medication, add another medication. I kind of think halfway that I had the heart attacks because of the side effects from the medications that they were putting me on.
Yeah, that's
And,
quite possible. They add
just the
up
stress
quickly.
level, right. The stress level and the side effects of all the medications. And I mean, when I was just in to see my cardiologist last month for my echocardiogram, he's like, wow, the medications are really working. And I'm like, Doc, I haven't taken your medications in almost 2 years. He's like, I just, once I started changing the way I ate, my blood pressure dropped down. The craziest part was the salt, because
Yeah,
they
I
always
know.
tell me, you can't eat salt, you can't eat salt. And then I can't remember who it was, but I saw somebody online that did this video about what is the first thing they do when you go to the hospital is they hook you up to a bag of salt. And I'm like, that's right. If your blood pressure is high, they double the salt intake. And I'm like, this is crazy. They're telling me I can't eat salt, but the first thing they do is give me salt. And then somebody told me Lasix is just prescription salt. And then I'm listening to you, and you're talking about eating good salt
Yeah,
and not just, iodized table salt.
right.
So I started putting salt in my water. I started putting salt in my coffee. I started salting my food. And all of a sudden, they told me I'd be on diuretics the rest of my life. No, I don't take diuretics anymore.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
when you're
need
not consuming sugar, I think that's the big key that people miss with salt is that if you're consuming salt and you're consuming sugar too, the sugar sends a signal, or your kidneys will send a signal saying, all right, hold on to the salt. We got to make sure we don't lose any of this salt for some reason.
right.
I figured there was a time when I knew why that was, but I know that that's how the kidneys respond. And when you go on a carnivore diet, you just about have to add salt to everything because you blow through electrolytes so quickly because you're
Oh
not
yeah.
retaining them anymore.
If I don't eat the salt, I don't have any energy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
we're eating
figured
all
that
that
out.
sugar thinking that's going to give us energy, but instead it's not only giving us, lack of energy in the long run because it's cheap short-term energy, but then it's
Yes,
causing us to have high blood pressure and all these other problems with our liver and kidneys and
right.
pancreas and so on and so forth. It's amazing how many things cascade from the effects of sugar and ultra processed foods that we've had in our
That
diet
too.
for so long.
Well, that and when I was watching your video and you talked about Michaela Peterson and her video, how that impacted you, I went and watched that one. And when I found out about her arthritis, they were telling me to go see a rheumatologist because of my gout to get it under control. And I'm like, wait a minute, if this girl can just by eating meat can put rheumatoid arthritis under control, I don't want to go see a rheumatologist and just be put on more meds that are going to have more side effects. I'm just going to eat more meat.
Right.
So I did, and it works. And then Lily Kane, I watched one of her videos, and she was talking about how the peptides in fruit can super irritate gout.
I did
So
not
I
know
thought,
that.
yeah, so I didn't either. And I was eating lots of fruit because my doctors kept telling me, well, cherries and this and that they help with the gout. And I mean, I have citrus trees in my yard. I'm in Arizona, you're in Florida, very similar climates. And so I would go out and eat the oranges and the lemons, and it's like the more I ate, the more pain I was in. So
Hmm.
I cut out the fruit, and all of a sudden, I don't have gout. And it's just like, this is crazy. All the things they tell us to do is exactly the opposite of what really seems to work.
That's definitely been my experience too. And it
Yeah.
does my heart good to hear all the things that you've been able to reverse with this because like for instance the guy that I knew that had gout, I wanted to tell him. I was like, "Look, carnivore is going to do this." Was early on when I first started. I said, "This is going to work. I promise you, it's going to work. I've seen what it's
It
done
does.
for people." And he's like, "No, I can't do that. I can't do that. They keep telling me I can't do that." So he's still
Yeah, yeah,
suffering with gout to this day. And
yeah.
but yet,
Tell him.
I used to work with the elderly, and a lot of them
Mhm.
would have a lot of these different issues. And it's like, can I recommend this to them? Can I recommend this to them with all the medicines they have and things like that? And you're just one more experience of somebody else out there that has gone through this with
Mhm.
congestive heart failure, with gout, 6 different cardiac issues, and then
Yeah.
also how it's helping you with your addiction issues apparently as well, because you talked about how getting addicted to those things and then coming off of them. Would you say that this helped with that?
Well, and I think part of the addiction had to do with the fact that I just felt miserable all the time. I mean, when you feel miserable all the time, you want to feel better,
That's
and
right.
if everything else you're doing isn't helping, it's like you give up. It's like, well, why don't I just go have a drink? At least I won't be in pain for a little while. Why don't I just get high? At least I can forget it for a couple hours. Um, you do what you have to do to get relief,
Hmm.
and when
So
you
your
find
pain
out,
was relieved, and that made it easy to drop the addictions. Then
yeah, absolutely, because the things that were
amazing.
driving me to that weren't there anymore.
And you talked about your heart strength being down as low as 10% of its
Yes.
capacity to work,
Hmm.
and you was up to 55. Is that the current place that
That's
you're
what it
at
is
with that?
currently, and I think it would be higher, but they put this titanium. I call it my little ass kicker in case I get lazy and die. It kicks my ass, puts me back up. It's my defibrillator. Well, they ran a wire through one of the valves of my heart, and when they were doing the echocardiogram, the it's like a sonogram. Like you look at a baby in a mother's womb, you
Hmm.
can literally see your heart, and I could see the wire running through the valve. And when the valve flap would try to close, it couldn't close all the way because there's a wire in there, so it's leaking. And I think that valve wouldn't leak anymore if that wire wasn't there. So I'd probably have a fully functioning heart again.
Oh,
But I
wow.
you
See,
know,
that's
remove that
something
wire.
else that I've run into stuff similar to that when it comes to like with my eyes. I had
Hmm.
LASIK surgery before this, and then my vision started to improve again. Like after my LASIK surgery, my vision had gone down a little bit, especially my far off vision. But then
Hmm.
my vision started to improve so much that not only did my far off vision get back to normal, but my up close vision got clearer too. But then
Nice.
I talked to my doctor later on because I noticed I had to start wearing readers again when I was working on my computers. And he said, well, it might be because you're working on these doggone computers all the time. That ain't helping you none. But also the fact that, well, if your eyes healed and we changed the surface of the lens to match your old state, then it might affect your vision negatively. So
That's
in your
interesting.
case, it's like your heart's better than it was before the wire was put in, and now, yeah, I can see how that would be. Like, I want to get it out now.
Right. I feel the same way. But they have a $6,000 deductible on my insurance, even though it's Medicare. Even though it's disability, there's still a deductible, and I just don't have the money. So I figure when God provides, then it'll
Right.
be time.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Well, I know
until
it's
then,
we get. Sometimes I get so excited about how much this has changed things for my health overall that I forget. Sometimes the Lord has to keep you calm for a little bit, let you realize that you need to have faith in Him too,
right. Well,
because this life
pride
is.
comes before a fall, right?
What's that? Pride becomes before a fall.
Pride comes before a fall, and I was really, really proud.
Well
I'm
put.
not so proud anymore, but I'm thankful.
Well, I'm extremely thankful to have you here to be able to share this story with people. So you started off doing carnivore kind of dirty. I remember reading in your comments that you sent to me that you were using fruits and vegetables in the beginning, but it sounded
Yes,
like you went lion diet after you saw my video.
I did. I did for a long time. But I love potatoes. So I started. So now when I do like a chuck roast in the pressure cooker, I'll throw in a couple carrots, a couple potatoes. But everything I eat is not processed. The only processed food that I eat is a little bit of bread because I read that scripture where it says the bread makes your heart stronger. But we have a Dave's bread here in town. It's not very far from where I live, and everything is non-GMO, organic certified. Minimally processed, and I can go right to the factory while they're cooking it and buy it right there. I mean, it's you can't get it any fresher. I mean, other
That's
than make
rare
it
to
myself.
find. I struggle with that too. The idea of every time I read the Bible and I read about bread, because when I take communion, I still use the little wafer and everything. But I figured I just don't need bread otherwise. Bread became, first of all, the bread we've gotten used to isn't bread
Right?
anyway. It's like a
No.
sponge that's
Yeah.
made to look like what we think bread looks like. And when you look at bread, especially ancient bread, it doesn't look anything like our loaf bread here in America. Why
Well,
we've grown to accept that as being the natural way bread's supposed to look, I'll never know.
and
But
I don't think the Bible's always talking about necessarily the foods that we have around us. Jesus said, "I don't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God."
right,
And then it talks about in Proverbs where it says, "Don't hang around those who gorge themselves on meat." I really struggled with that for a little while. But then I realized how many of us Christians we do what I would call it the Facebook Bible, where we only get the encouraging scriptures and we kind of ignore the ones that we don't really understand. And Solomon said, "Be wary of the king's the the
morsels.
morsels, right? The ones that give you the greatest pleasure, because that's food is deceptive."
Yeah,
So if we only pick and choose out of the Bible what we're going to grow on as a Christian, we're missing the bread. If we only eat the meat, we're still missing the part that sustain us through the hard times. It, it, it's Jesus said by every word, not just the ones that we agree with, not just the ones that we understand, but by continuously reading through that, we get a better understanding. I have a desire to start a YouTube channel where I actually just read the Bible every day and talk about it. Maybe have people like you come on or whatever. I don't know. I haven't done it yet. It's just a dream. It's a thought. I'm looking into it. I'd like to talk to other podcasters and find out how do you get started in this and avoid the pitfalls. The more I look at videos about how to run your own podcast, it seems like all they're trying to do is sell you their equipment or their program. I'm
Yeah.
not interested in that. I heard you say at that last conference you were at there with all the other carnivores that,
Yeah.
hey,
Dr.
just
Schultz's.
grab something to record it and put it out there. People need it, and that struck me.
Yeah. Well, that was what it came down to for me. All the stuff that I watched, because when I was researching how to do YouTube with my sons, because he was going to do video games and stuff on there, and then I started doing it with him. I think it was Think Media, guy named Sean Cannell. He's also a Christian. Cannell or Cannell, I can't remember how to pronounce his name. But he talked about that as ultimately you just got to press record and upload that video or go live,
Mm-hmm.
whichever one, because that's the action that gets you started. And then you start to roll with the momentum of it. But yeah, it's kind of like the Wild West. I mean, you can watch
Yeah.
everybody's videos on how to do it, but by the time you get there, it will have probably changed because YouTube is always changing. There's new platforms coming out all the time. And then you got the politics pushing and pulling the platforms in different directions. So it's really just a matter of having something to say and being willing to say it, as far as I'm
What?
concerned. Now, managing the business side of it can be the tough part. Being disciplined about when you're going to do your videos and having appointments and all these other things that I was not very good at. When it came to, because I was just doing this as I went along and sharing my story. But now it's growing into something different, and it takes a lot. It takes more than I'm used to at this point. Even though I've run a retirement home, I've been the manager of businesses. It's different when you're starting something from the ground up, and there's no guidelines, there's no boundaries
Mm.
to stay in. So,
It's
but as
like
long
raising
as you're
kids,
passionate about what you're saying, it should work out.
right? Almost that sounds like raising a child up. Nobody tells you how to do it. You just got to do it.
Yep. Yep.
It's
Absolutely right.
showing up is half the battle, right?
So you've rebuilt your relationship with your children too.
I am working on that. Yes, it's it's a progress. When something my wife said to me when I was in the midst of my worst of the worst, I was. I hate to even admit this. I was speaking to her in a way that I would not allow any other man on earth to speak to my wife, and she told me that. She's like, the way you're speaking to me right now, you would not allow any man to speak to me.
Yeah.
And she was right. And it broke my heart. And then I thought about how I'd been speaking to the children that I love more than my own self. And man, that'll make you repent.
Yeah.
That will make you just, sorry.
You're tearing me up,
That'll,
man, too. I'm telling you, Stephen, because I've been there. I know exactly
yeah.
what you're talking about. And a lot of
And that's
times
right.
the anger is directed at yourself, but you're giving it to those you love because they're
Well,
the only ones there.
yeah, and I think the anger is just a mask for what you really feel inside that you don't want to let anybody see. And so you cover it with anger. And then you take it out on the people that are closest to you just because they're close enough to do it too. And when I think there's words you can say, especially as a father and as a husband, that are worse than any physical thing you could do. And having to humble myself enough to admit that, um, I used to swear to my kids, I'll always be there no matter where you're at in the world. If you need me, you just call. I'll move heaven and earth and I'll come. And then I was a homeless addict out on the street and they couldn't call me. And even if they had, I wouldn't have been able to come. I spent a year and a half homeless, man, living out of my car. And
And this
yeah,
was all after 48.
yeah,
Man,
this was
it's
all in the
amazing
last
how
5, 6
similar our
years,
paths are when it comes to the age that everything hit us at and the
right?
relationships and stuff like that. Because I still have a lot of bridges to rebuild with my children from my first marriage.
And
So
I
I
call
can
that my
definitely
extreme
relate.
midlife crisis. Well, thankfully, I still have my first marriage. It's not as good as I would like it to be, but I have that opportunity to rebuild it.
That's
And
rare.
right,
It is.
and yeah. Well, I figured God hates divorce, and I've done enough things in my life that God hates. I don't need to do one more. So I'm doing everything I can to fix it, and it's humbling. As a man, he used to lead his family. Now trying to rebuild it,
Yeah.
but God made me a builder. I've been a builder all my life. My father before me, I inherited that company from him, and I was just able to pass it on to my oldest daughter. Um, in all of this, I kept the business license. I'm not sure how or why, but I never let it go. And she came to me just a few months ago, and she said, "Dad, I'd like to be in business. Do you still have your license?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And I gave it to her, and so now she's taking that business. And,
That's awesome, man. It's just, and
yeah,
and
right.
all of this stems from changing your diet.
Crazy, huh?
I mean,
It's
that's
amazing what
that's why
people use.
sometimes I even feel like when I talk about my story, I want to give all the credit to God for it because he led me to this way of eating and he's the one that gave us the animals and so on and so forth. So when
Right.
I say that lion diet changed everything, I don't want to discount who created it all.
No.
But it's amazing how much when we get the poison out of our bodies, it
Yeah.
changes everything in our life. And it's not
You know,
just getting healthier physically, but it sounds like mentally you've made a tremendous leap forward with the addictions, and then spiritually you've made a leap forward and you're rebuilding your marriage and your family. Man,
yeah, I
I'm
think
I'm in awe, Stephen, and jeez. As you know, I'm a little under the weather today. I'm holding it well, but I've been experiencing residual effects of some kind of flu or possibly COVID. I don't know what it was
yeah,
because
I
I haven't
watched the
gone to
video
see the
you put
doctor.
out a couple of days ago. You definitely sounded sick.
Yeah, yeah, I sound a little better today. I'm just mostly tired today, but it's reminded me of what it was like when I was feeling weak all the time because I have gone so long without any illnesses that sometimes I don't know. I look at this as being as frustrating as it is, the humbling of it to remember that I am not Superman.
Mm,
And none of this is because of like my personal, it's not for my glory. Somebody else showed me about it and I was just passing on the information. But it's
yeah,
so easy to start to think that I'm something special because I shared all of this with everybody. And God just reminds me, no, you're still a human being and you're still under my control. And
yeah,
it's good to be reminded of that because it's my arrogance can get the best of me and cause me to make some bad decisions. So it's been good to see even through this illness, I've been able to be thankful for what I've
yeah.
been dealing
Amen.
with.
Well,
And it
I
sounds like
didn't
you
do it
went through a
alone.
lot. You didn't do it
I didn't
alone?
do it alone. God put people like you in my life. He put my oldest sister. Um, when everybody else didn't know how to help me, when they all just kind of fled, you know what I mean? She reached out and grabbed a hold of me like I was a drowning man, and she kept a hold of me until I got back in the boat.
Hmm.
And
Well, that's beautiful as well. I'm glad I
it's
could.
good to
I'm
have
glad I
people.
could be a part of your journey, Stephen. It's
Thank you.
something that every time I hear it, it adds one more bullet to the chamber, I guess, or something for me to feel like I got to keep talking about this. I got to keep sharing this with people,
You
and that's
do.
why we're sitting here today. Is I wanted to be able to share your story with folks, and
Yeah.
I hope to be able to share more stories with people because it is amazing what happens when you decide to stop eating the stuff that's in the food supply the way it's been provided to us and start eating a natural human diet.
Well, it wasn't just you either. I mean, it was you also introducing me to the people that had an impact on your life, that had helped shape your journey,
Yeah.
and being able to go back and look at the videos that they presented as well, and to find out what you found out. What made you decide what you decide. To be able to look at those things as well. So keep those relationships, man, because they make a difference.
Well, I'm working on building those a little bit better with the people within the community, because I've, with that situation a weekend ago at Dr. Kiltz's event where they were raising money for Healing Humanity, it was an eye opener for both Katie and I as to how big of a deal this is. I mean, I had a pretty good notion of it from my experience, but you don't really get to see it until you start to see all the other people involved and you start to really hear those stories and have that community too. I didn't give it enough credit because I was on the other side. I was looking at the camera lens and the community was behind it, responding to what I was saying, but also letting me know how their changes have been. And it encouraged me to keep going forward too. So I didn't realize that I was getting that same community that a lot of people were getting from watching the YouTube videos. But now I really see it on both sides, and I get exactly
Mhm.
what you're saying about how it's so important to have people out there to reach out, to just say, hey, this might work, because it's working for me and a lot of other people. And it's so foreign to what we're taught that if we're
Right?
not talking about it, nobody's going to know,
Yeah.
because all the documentation and everything out there by the government and doctors and stuff that's been around for many, many years tells us to keep eating horribly.
Oh my gosh, it's terrible. I mean, I really hope that this RFK thing is going to make a difference. I don't know, but
I'm
yeah,
thankful
just
it's bringing awareness at the very least.
yeah.
Have you noticed
Me too.
anything with what he's doing or anything that he's come up with? Because I haven't been paying as close of attention to the news lately.
Just the fact that he's shining a light on things. I mean, the whole capture of the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, because having been on the other side of it and having reaped the repercussions of it in my own life, the getting fatter, getting sicker, and desperately trying to get well, and feeling like a drowning man grasping at straws. Just somebody help me, because everything I'm trying is not working.
Yeah.
And the more you cry out about it, just the more medicines they give you, the more it just. I feel sorry for the doctors, because one day they're going to have to look back on their lives and go, "What did I do?" You know, I've tried to
Well,
help those people, but it's just like, man, you we talk about ministers that have fallen, or people, on pedestals that have all of a sudden had the light of the truth shown on them. It's like, having gone through that crisis in my own life, what is going to happen to all these medical professionals when all of a sudden they see, like, all the advice I've been given has been wrong. And, how are they going to be able to deal with that? How are they going to carry that emotionally? It makes me pray for them. It really does. And have a compassion, because that when that realization hits, it's going to hit hard, and it's going to hit a lot of people.
that's a good point. I hadn't thought about it from that direct perspective. I've thought about it mostly of people, they either choose to do the right thing or they choose not to do the right thing because it's easier just to go along to get along. And I think a lot of these doctors, a lot of them, it's just, well, this is what I was taught. This is how it works.
Mhm.
And then I know there's politics involved with doctors, especially a new doctor in the community. He's got to kind of be careful he doesn't stir up the waters, basically. I've talked to a few of them, and they don't want to talk about it on camera a lot, but they talk about it in a way that they have a lot of pressure from their colleagues
Mhm.
to not say certain things and to behave a certain way.
Well,
And
even my own doctors, I mean, I go into them and I show them. I mean, they look at my blood work, they look at my health, they look at the recovery that I'm going through, and I tell them, exactly what I've changed. And they're like, well, we feel like we need to put you back on medications. And I'm like, you can prescribe anything you want. I'm not going to take it. It's like, why would I invite those side effects back into my life when when I don't need it anymore. It's like I'm living proof sitting right here in front of you, and it's almost like they just can't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see that too. Well, I pray the doctors wake up and do like, Ken Berry and Sean Baker and
Yeah.
Annette Bosworth and so many others, Anthony Chafee, just so many doctors who have said, you know what, my job is to be a healer, not a dealer. And they decided that they're going to find what it's going to take to help get their patients healthy rather
Yeah,
than
I've been
just
watching all of
go
them.
along to get along.
You.
Huh?
Yeah, because of your influence, I've actually been watching them more and more. And I see that they're even trying to find their way. They're just like the rest of us. They're like, there has to be something better. There's got to be a way that works. And thank God, wisdom
Well,
comes from above.
Sean Baker, especially with that thing he's doing with Rivero, is
Hmm.
amazing too, because he set up this system where these people are basically carnivore doctors or people that are on this type of way of eating, and they're helping people using their medical practice over the internet, and taking advantage of the technology we have now to try to spread this beyond the boundaries of just one clinical office or something like that. So it
Yeah, I
is
wish.
exciting to see that happening. It's exciting to see that because, like you say, what's going to happen when these doctors realize that most of the stuff they're doing is not working? Well, with people like Sean Baker and them leading the way, hopefully they can just follow behind that and take it to
Right.
another level. Now, granted, there is a lot more money in keeping people sick and treating their sickness than there is in getting them healthy. So I don't know. I don't know how that's going to play out. But if money is the most important thing, then it's going to ruin us all. But
Right.
if it's actually about having integrity and doing what doctors say that they get into doctoring to do, which is to do no harm, then this should be an easy choice for them to start paying attention to their patients who are talking about these changes and experiences. I mean, CHF, gout, 6 cardiac events, uh, 5 times better
Oh,
heart function than what you had when you started. That's, whew.
yeah, nothing to even begin to talk about the respiratory issues and all the other things that I've gone through as well. I mean, we could fill up hours with just what what has been healed, but I feel like these are the main points that I felt I needed to share. And,
Well, I
and
understand those little things
people
don't
have
always
other
strike us as,
questions,
what's that?
if people have other questions and they want to talk further, they can get a hold of me through you, I guess, right?
Right,
Um,
right. Well, be sure to check the comments on this video afterward because I'm sure some people will comment directly to you, and then you can respond using your own YouTube handle when you see them. But yeah, just scroll through and you'll be able to see that. But they can do that, or if you have a email or website or anything you want to give. I don't know if you've got anything like
not
that, but
yet.
yeah, just leave it in the comments, folks. If you want to hear more from Steven about what worked for him. Um, I'm hoping. See, I'm not used to it going so quickly, but you covered so much in such a short period of time. And if I wasn't feeling as poorly as I was, I'd probably be trying to stretch this out a little bit. But
Oh,
your
trust me, I'm a
story is really
retired pastor.
amazing.
I can talk.
Well, I normally can too. Man, I thought I had it rough beforehand. So you just reminded me about how much you've been through, and it's uh, it's moving. And if this, for anybody watching this right now, if what Steve's talking about rings true to you, something like this is going on in your life, you're having these health issues, you're going round and round with your doctors trying to find solutions, and instead of finding solutions, you find yourself addicted to the medications that they were giving you. Uh, there is a solution, and it's to get off the treadmill that big food and big pharma have got us on. You don't have to
Yes.
wait for RFK Jr. and the whole crowd there to do what they're doing to make your life start changing. All you got to do is decide what I'm going to put in here is not going to be the garbage that comes from these fast food chains and convenience stores and grocery stores. When you look at packaging on the shelf that talks about, I don't even like to think about the stuff that's in the food that they make, but they'll have cereal that's like chocolate cake cereal or something like that. And I'm thinking,
Mhm.
and that's mild compared to some of the stuff I've seen out there. But we don't think two thoughts about it. We just think it's food. I'll get it for my kids. They'll be happy. Blah. Done. But then when your kids are all overweight and got pre-diabetes before they're out of their teens and so on, you look back and you say, what did I do wrong? The box said it was heart healthy and so on and so forth. Well, there's enough evidence out there now that is showing us that the food that's in our current food supply is not healthy for us. And when I say food, I mean the products that are out there. The actual food that's in the grocery store, the meat that's back there, is perfectly fine. Now, you want to check it out. Sometimes they'll have injections and things like that in it, depending on where it came from. And if you can get locally sourced beef, that's even better, especially if you get to know the rancher or something like that. But getting back to basic principles on what you're eating can change your life. And Stephen here is just another example.
Yeah. One more thing about the gout. If I eat like a hot dog or processed sausage or bacon, my God, man, I am in so much pain so fast. Last time I went to Sonic and I had a chili dog. It cost me $400 to have my knee drained. I had to go to an orthopedic surgeon, put that big old needle in there and pull that gout out because, my knee looked like a balloon. I will never eat those things again. So if you are suffering with gout, stay away from processed meats. Eat the real stuff. Take the time to cook it yourself. Do what you got to do, but don't eat that stuff.
Well, when it comes to the processed meats, a lot of times I tell folks, you do what you can afford, but if you've got gout, this sounds like some good advice to look into as well. If you're on a carnivore diet, you want to avoid those processed meats. And I'm assuming it's probably the sugar and the other stuff that they put in there. A lot of times they have a lot of ingredients in those processed meats that you just wouldn't think were there. And
I used to be a big breakfast guy, sausage and bacon and Canadian bacon and ham. And oh man, I don't touch that stuff anymore. I won't even buy it. I won't look at it. And I don't even let my wife buy it. That's probably not nice, but it's like, I don't want it in the house. I don't want to be tempted by it in any way. I know the pain that it caused me, and it's not worth it.
Well, that's amazing, Steve. Your story is really, really something. I appreciate you coming on and share it with me today. Is there anything you'd like to leave my audience with as a last thought?
Yes. In all of this self-destruction and recovery, God played the biggest part. He puts the people in our lives that will help us through the process. We don't have to do it ourselves. He knows who we're going to run into, right? The Bible says we're all a part of the body, and nobody does anything by themselves. If I take my phone right here and I move it from here to here or whatever, how many parts of my body were involved in just that simple movement? My brain told all of it what to do. My finger didn't know what my elbow was doing. My elbow didn't know what my shoulder was doing, but it was all working in unity. So trust God with the process. Trust him that he'll bring the right people into your life, and then listen when he does. And you'll be amazed at the changes you'll see.
Wow, man, that's beautiful. You couldn't end it any better than that, Steve. I'm going to go ahead and get ready to stop this recording here, but I want you to stick around for a second just so I can have some parting words with you. So, folks, thanks for joining us today. Be sure to leave the comments in the comment section down there for Steve, because he's going to be checking it out to see if he's got any questions for you guys to answer. And be sure to join us next time. Thanks for being here. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Steve.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?
Hey, it's Dante Ferrigno. I just wanted to thank you first of all for watching this video, but I also wanted to tell you about my merch shop. I have a link in the description for a bunch of different items I've put together for you to be able to show your support for the carnivore lifestyle, and every purchase helps me to keep doing what I'm doing here on Ferrigno Freedom. The Hack Your Health event coming up in Tampa this November 14th through 16th. I'm excited that I've been invited to be a part of this once again. Get your tickets early and a lot less expensive. And not only that, you get $100 off
When you use my discount code Dante, you can meet some of your favorite carnivore stars. I hope to see you there.